in the top floor of this barn, and I was clawing through a hole in the barn to trying to get down to this carriage, and my coat got stuck on a rafter big nail, and I was hanging upside down. So I'm hanging upside down, yelling at the guy. I'm like yelling, thinking to myself, somebody's got to hear me eventually. I must have hung there for 15 minutes before he finally came back in and basically cut my coat out of it.
But they didn't get this on camera, though, right?
No, nothing on camera. Yeah, I think some of the best stuff happens when the cameras get turned off.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another Talking About Cars with Randy Cardoon and, of course, our co-host, Hot Rod Bob Beck. And you see our guest there. In fact, before I introduce him, the late George Carlin once talked about a place for your stuff. Where do you keep your stuff? In a box? In a closet? Do you keep it in a garage? Your barn? 3 buildings? Well, for years, the popular TV show American Pickers has been going through America's stuff. We've seen it all, and occasionally stuff in other countries, too. We'll talk about that. Robbie Wolfe here is one of the intrepid searchers of stuff for his brother's company, Antique Archaeology, and it's seen on the History Channel and now on Netflix. How about that? Again, welcome to the program, Rob Wolfe.
How you guys doing? I appreciate you guys. Thanks for having me out today.
I'm glad you could join us.
Thank you for joining us. That's great. Now, you are in your own facility right now. Is that true?
Yes, I am. Yeah. My facility is it's a body shop that was built in 1932.
Oh.
So I can remember as a kid coming down here on my 10-speed bicycle and looking through the windows. They had 16 guys in this shop actually working on cars. And the company, if you think about it, 1932, that was, the hot rod era, I call it, or all the design changes were happening across the board. That's the stuff that was in this building. So transportation history for me is, I live it every day, and this is the building it actually happened in. From 32 until 2021, they were in business.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It seems that you and your brother both grew up to become guys who go after things, that collect things. I assume at this point we can say your folks were a big reason why you are where you are as far as your collecting interests.
I think my mom had a lot to do with things. My dad left. We were both, my brother and I. My mom was a divorced woman that had 3 kids, and you're talking about in the late 60s. And she gave us everything that she possibly could. And the plus to that was she gave us our imagination, and she let our imaginations run wild. And we didn't have a lot growing up. So, bicycles and things we found in the trash, and we would fix up, and then, we'd put them out front for sale, and people would buy them from us. And my great grandfather was a picker, farmer. I think we all are pickers in our own way. We don't necessarily go out and look for stuff every day, but in our own hearts, I think that every human being on the planet has a passion for something that they love. So that's kind of what my mom was there, and she fed that passion to my brother and I, and we just ran with it. We were always entrepreneurs. We never really wanted to work for anybody else. And thank God, I'm 57 years old today. Actually, today is my birthday.
Oh, happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Yeah. So it's been a great ride. I look for the next 50 years to still be around and doing the same thing I'm doing.
I hope you are. That'll be great. You mentioned you'll be bringing in spaceships as old antiques.
I collect everything that's to do with robots.
Okay.
So you talk about my brother running wild. My passion runs wild. If it's old and it appeals to me, it's in my shop.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, in 50 years, the Tesla will be old.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, what's so funny is that one of the things that I collect a lot of advertising. I'm known for a lot of advertising. I probably got 60 or 70 neons hanging from the ceiling of my shop, and I'm constantly moving those things around. But the big thing right now that I see in the collecting field, people ask me what they should be buying, and I say buy the Lexan signs. And Lexan, people don't realize this. Lexan started in 1947. They literally started making Lexan dealership signs in 1947.
Wow.
So when you look at people in advertising, they don't really think about that. And the ones that you do find, if they're complete, they're not broken. It's like a needle in a haystack to find those things because of the when they had to take those signs down, the companies, they would have to crush them, send a picture of that crushed in order to get paid. So that's why a lot of signs didn't survive, and especially in the Lexan stuff. So I've started collecting. I've got some Buick signs that I've got. I've got Cadillac. I've got some Ford. I've got some early Chevy. That stuff's few and far between. People are like, man, the advertising market has exploded so big that we can't afford to do that. Well, actually, no one's really paying attention to the Lexan signs. You can still buy those cheap.
Huh. Okay. Now, when did you start with the show? Because I've been watching the show since, well, as long as I can remember it being on. But you weren't part of the show initially.
No, basically I own my own company. I've got 5 kids. There was a little bit difference between my brother and I. I mean, I had to, my wife would not have liked it very much if I was on the road 24/7 with 5 kids growing up. So I kind of stayed in the wings on the backside. The very first episode of American Pickers that was ever aired because, I went out there. I was the first one out there. I was the guy that pick that my brother was on was my pick, was my guy. His name was Bear. He was a carnival guy. We've been picking him for years. So I've been in the wings on the backside. I've done scouting for the show. There's 385 episodes that have been filmed. Out of 385, I'm in, I think, 120.
Okay.
And now I'm a mainstay on the show. I basically are there 24/7 filming with either my brother, and we brought on our friend Jersey John from John Zalay from New Jersey.
Sounds reasonable. Jersey John from New Jersey. Yeah, okay, that works. Now, where are you based out of?
I'm based out of Davenport, Iowa.
Okay.
I'm actually, my property is in downtown Davenport, and like I said before, it's the biggest thing for me is, you guys are car guys, so like I said, I think I'll give you guys a tour of the shop here. It's a mess, but you'll understand if it appeals to me, I buy it. I'm not like a Chevy guy or a Ford guy or an Oldsmobile guy or a Buick guy. If it appeals to me and I like it, and I didn't have it as a kid, then I'm going to buy it.
I understand completely.
Most recently, you were on Instagram talking about a mint green Cadillac that you were starting up. And where did you find that?
That came out of a barn in Aledo, Illinois, which is about 30 miles from me. And it's a funny story. It goes back to that advertising thing. A guy I found out had a Cadillac sign out there that was a Lexan sign. And I went out there to look at that and try and buy that. And he's like, well, I can't sell that unless you buy the car, because the car came from that dealership. And I go, well, they don't really go together. And he wouldn't take no for an answer. He's like, you buy the car, you get the sign. So I started looking the car over. He told me the story behind it. It has 21,000 original miles on it. It was a farmer that owned it. He drove it to Sunday to church, and that's it. And if you know anything about farmers in Iowa, Illinois, it's a gravel road. So the very bottom edge of the car got gravel chips on it, and that was starting to, on the paint edge would start to rust. But man, what a great car to drive. Just floats on air. And I love the fact that it had mint green with green glass with green interior.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
See, that talks about the fact that we always wonder, Bob, where does guys like Charles Phoenix get all these cars with low mileage and they're just completely primo, and you're talking about it right there. I mean, that's how some people handled their cars at the time.
Well, even watching your show, there are people, for lack of a better term, kind of hoarders of things of this nature. But you go into barns, you go into garages, you go into warehouses, and there's things stacked everywhere that are in beautiful condition, like they've never been used almost.
Yeah. That's the beauty of being a picker. That's what you hope when you open that door. That's what you're going to find.
Yeah. Well, it's a good thing you don't know the meaning of the word claustrophobia.
No, not at all. I've gotten myself into some crazy predicaments. I can tell you that.
What is the most interesting one you've been to? I've seen some that were a little sketchy, where you're climbing around and stuff, and there's the building's creaking.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, they're about ready to fall over. We did a show on a museum up in Wisconsin, and I went back up there to pick some stuff up that my brother had bought. This was House on the Rock, and if you ever get in that area in Wisconsin, it's one of the most amazing collections that was ever put out there. It's crazy. That guy's vision. I think I have a vision. He had 10 times the vision that I ever had. It's so. But he bought all these carriages, and we went and looked at these carriages. They were stacked inside of this barn, stacked, and I'm talking like horse carriages, buggy carriages, doctor ones, stuff that was made for movie theaters. Anyhow, the guy had left me in there, and the funny thing is, I was climbing around, and I was like trying to get down to this carriage, and I thought he was still there, but he wasn't. The guy had gone out to the house or something. And I was in the top floor of this barn, and I was clawing through a hole in the barn to trying to get down to this carriage. And my coat got stuck on a rafter big nail, and I was hanging upside down. So I'm hanging upside down, yelling at the guy. I'm like yelling, thinking to myself, somebody's got to hear me eventually. I must have hung there for 15 minutes before he finally came back in and basically cut my coat out of it.
But they didn't get this on camera, though, right?
No, nothing on camera. Yeah, I think some of the best stuff happens when the cameras get turned off.
But did you tell this story to your brother, and did he ever let you live that down?
No. Oh, heck yeah. I tell those stories all the time. Yeah. So
well, I imagine that stuff happens.
It's great. The stuff that happens behind the scenes, we try and video as much as we can, and we talk about it all the time about doing blooper episodes. That might be coming up in the near future.
That'll be good. That'll be good.
Yeah, that'll be certainly a lot of fun. So let's talk a little bit about the cars, your car journey, if you will. Talk a little bit about, Rob, your first car that you remember.
Oh God, it was. I know it to this day. It was my stepfather gave me a Chrysler Newport 4-door, 440 in it, automatic, and I was 16 years old. It was absolutely the funnest car I ever owned in my life. It's crazy car. Remember what year? I want to say it was like a 72. The purple beast, we called that thing. Actually, I tell you what, I've kind of been looking for one of those, but not to be able to find one. So,
yeah, I got a feeling that that's a little hard to find. They weren't exactly mass appeal popular.
No. Well, again, who wants a 4-door Newport? You know, it's a pretty ugly damn car.
Yeah. Hot rodders took the engines out. That's all they did.
Yeah, that's exactly what they did with them. They put them in freaking dusters and everything else. So it was, yeah.
How many cars do you have right now?
Well, last year I had over 30, and I got to a point where I was like, you know what, I'm done with this. I started purging out all my projects and doing different things, and I'm down to about 9 or 10 right now, maybe 11.
Give me an idea what you have.
I call that a manageable 11.
Okay, my wife's not going to watch this episode.
Ultimately, though, it's like my brother. He has a lot of cars too, and I tell those guys all the time. Ultimately, you have to drive these. You have to get out and drive them every day.
Yeah.
So, I just finished like last week. I have a 37 Ford pickup. I drove that for a week. I put it away. Then I get one other car out, and I'll drive that for a week. I'll put it away, and I just switch them out, as I'm going through. So,
okay.
Today, I don't know. Today's 32 Ford day. I'm going to get 32 Ford. I have a 32 Ford pickup truck that's an original hot rod that was built back in the 50s. That car, everybody that looks at it, they laugh because it looks like you pulled it out of a barn, and it's a great car, but it literally looks like all the paint's flaking off of it. And everybody's like, are you going to restore that? And I'm like, wow, it'd be so sacrilegious to do that. It wouldn't even be funny.
Yeah, it's worth more because of it's showing its history.
Exactly. It has everything on its original. It's got an Oldsmobile rocket in it with a tri-power on it. It's just a cool in the history. And I have photos of it. I have the original build sheet. I have everything that came with it back in the day.
Wow, that was an early build then, using an Olds engine.
It was one of the very first Oldsmobile changed the history of hot rodding, I think.
Yeah, Olds and Cadillac with that Kettering V8.
Yep, exactly. So this was one of the very first. And when I found this, I found it at a car show. And it was probably 10 years ago. It was sitting in the corral for sale. It had a block of a 350 sitting in it. And in the back of the truck was the Oldsmobile rocket motor.
Oh.
And I bought that thing for $5,000. Everybody thought I was nuts. I hauled it home. The whole interior was black. It had an original Mercury dash, still had the original pinstriping on it. The original steering wheel was in it. We took the Olds, had it rebuilt. We put it back in the car, put it all back to what it was originally. Wow. The only thing I did differently with it, I put a T5 transmission behind it.
Oh, okay.
And so I can drive it.
Yeah, exactly. That makes it great. Now, is it Olds rocket 303?
No, I don't think it's a 303
or 324.
I think it's a 324. I think it is.
Okay, so it's a little bit late. It's a second gen rocket. That's cool.
So you said it had a Mercury dash. You said it had a Mercury dash. I mean, is it Canadian or something?
It's cut down. Everything's cut down on it. The guy customized everything and put it all in there. It's a crazy, crazy, crazy car.
That's cool. That's cool. That would be fun to drive.
It is a boss. I mean, literally, that's my variety though. It goes down into that. So like I said, I'll take you guys out in the shop before we end this and let you do a little show around of what the cars are laying around in here.
Sure, absolutely. So you were talking a little bit about some of the picks that you've done. Is there a pick that really stands out as far as something that was tough to get to, or something that just seemed very memorable, something that you really enjoyed?
The biggest thing for me, I think, memorable wise, it's not necessarily always about the pick. The picks are what I call the cherry on top of the icing. It's the people that we get to meet and to understand their stories of why they collected the stuff they did and where they got it from. Sometimes when we get on a pick, we're dealing with the daughter or the son, or maybe an uncle, where the people have passed on, but they get to tell that story again. And maybe they remember where those pieces come from. I think some of the best stuff for me is if I can get into anything automotive or anything transportation related. It can be steam trains. It can be scooters. It can be bicycles. It can be cars. It can be buses. It can be semis. I mean, I'm that kind of guy. If it has a story to it and it really appeals to me, I'm going to bring it home. And ultimately for me, guys, I'm all about, I got to make that thing run. I have to hear the vehicle run. I have to be able to drive it. That's what really gets me going crazy when I pull something in the shop and I'm like, okay, we got to make this thing run. I got to hear the engine run. I got to be able to drive this thing today. That's
cool. That's a great attitude. I love it.
A lot of people talk about the Aerosmith van episode, and you were involved in that. Tell me a little bit from your perspective how that all came about and how unusual of a pick that was.
Well, the thing is that the van itself had been sitting in the weeds and basically in the woods forever. When it was found, when Mike and Frank got it, we had to reach out to the guys to find out if it was the true original one. And then the amount of work, once we found out that it was, the amount of work actually wanting these guys to take it on their 50th anniversary tour and bring it up on stage and do all that stuff, then it kind of was a game changer. Okay, now all of a sudden we got to make this thing run. Now we got to make it drive. So we ended up having to do a donator van that came with that piece to get those together to make sure actually put it all back together to make it, so we could drive it when we were in Vegas. There's no better feeling than that in the world, though, to resurrect something that has the history like that. We're talking about rock and roll history here. We just did an episode that's coming up. I think they've already aired part of it with a recording studio that was found, and we had to search out the trailer piece that went to it. Now, this was a recording studio that was put together. That went out and would do a lot of the concerts that were in it. So like when you hear Leonard Skinner live, this was recorded on this recording studio. You hear Fleetwood Mac live in the 70s and 80s. This was recorded at this studio.
Oh,
This
wow.
studio was brought to the grounds and then recorded on it. It's kind of a neat story. I'm going to you'll have to watch the episode to understand a little bit more about that. But
how in the world
yeah,
do you
I think,
get that? How
go
in
ahead,
the
Randy.
world, how in the world do you find something like that? It's like a needle in a haystack, isn't it?
Well, it is to a point, but the thing is, being a picker, it's like being a car guy. If you were a 32 Ford guy and everybody knew you were the guy to basically, you were searching them out all over the United States. You've done all your feelers. That's what my brother and I have done. I mean, we've been doing what we're doing for over 40 years.
Oh.
So when we make connections, we're making connections everywhere. I mean, I've got books and computers filled with logs of connections of stuff that I'm looking for and stuff that I've been trying to find. And people know that I'm out there searching. Like tomorrow, I'll be in Dallas, Texas. I'll be down at the Pate Swap Meet. I've already bought like 25 items that are down there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that people have reached out to me because they know the stuff I'm looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Tate's an interesting swap meet. I was able to, when I lived in the Dallas area, that was an annual venture down there to that. As a matter of fact, I'm restoring a pedal car I bought there 40 years ago.
Right now, you're still restoring it.
Well, no, I restored it once. I gave it to my son. He's now 44 years old, and his son is 2.
Yeah.
It's going to him for Christmas, just like it did to my son.
Oh, that's
And
awesome.
so, it's kids
It's
drive it and beat
family.
the crap out of it. Yeah. So now it's time to redo it and repurpose it for the next generation.
Awesome. I love that. That's the key to it. I've got a grandson now, and it's kind of trying to figure out the different things that I can put together with him to try and hopefully move him in the right direction of the collecting field and saving history and doing all those things.
And taking over for you when you want to retire, right? Yeah.
Well, according to my wife, I'll never retire. And honestly, I think, and you guys can attest to this. I don't care how old you get. It doesn't matter how old you are. I mean, there's guys that I've picked that are 99 years old that have been doing this their whole lives. The thing that keeps them alive is them being able to pick. The thing that keeps them, you guys, it's no different. Just think if you couldn't go in your garage anymore, or you couldn't go in your shop, you couldn't put your hands on stuff. So that's the way I look at my life. I'll never give it up. I'll never fully retire from what I do. I have too much stuff.
Is it fair to say that this is an emotional kind of thing as far as collecting? Because, for example, if the story is good, then you feel tied to it. So you really feel that's part of your story as you start looking around for stuff?
Yeah, I think the emotional attachment to every item that's out there. I think every person out there has an emotional attachment to the things that they collect. They love the story, and the story can continue to live on. I probably have an emotional attachment to way too much stuff. I can tell you that. It's a little crazy. I can tell you that.
All right. So what emotional attachment have you gotten for an item that you're not going to sell that you picked?
I don't know. I'll show you guys one thing right here. I've got a piece that's here in my office. I'll see if I can get it to come in here. There's a piece that's sitting up in see if I can get my camera to do the thing it needs to do right there.
Oh, the Flying Crow.
Came off of a friend of mine that was a big collector of train stuff. It says the Flying Crow on it. It's one of those pieces it's the only one in the world. It was made for the Flying Crow train, the dinner car that went from Texarkana, Texas to Kansas City. Every train car had its own, what they call a drum head. That's the drum head that went on there. It lights up and it's reverse painted glass.
Oh,
so it came from a good friend of mine that's a big collector, and that's the kind of stuff. I mean, that's what I mean. And for my collection, I've got so many things that I collect that is just craziness stuff. This is just stuff in my office. I'm gonna try and get in here. Here's a bicycle that I just picked up right here. That's called a Silver King. It's 1936. And it's an all aluminum bicycle.
Really?
Yeah, every piece on it's aluminum. So it's one of those things, again, that you look around, you collect stuff like this. We get into some of this stuff right here, like this behind me, this wall right here. All these photos came out of a museum outside of Hershey, Pennsylvania. One of the very first times I went to Hershey, I got into this museum. They were selling, this stuff was in the back room. It's all transportation. Again, this is all photos pickup trucks that were back in the day. So if you look at some of these photos that are in here, they're all advertising different companies. But I got lucky to buy it, and that's something I probably never saw because it was one of the very first picks I ever did in outside of Hershey, going there 15, 20 years ago.
Wow.
You know, you talk about Pate. Pate is, if you've been to Pate is, and you go to Hershey's another animal. Pate is, I always tell people, it's Louisiana, Oklahoma, New Mexico, Texas, Arkansas, Missouri. Those people don't go to Pate. I mean, those people don't go to Hershey. They go to Pate. Yeah, they don't leave that area. So it's a whole nother, it's a fun time. It's a good time. I love doing that stuff. So, you know, and then you get into here. Look at this. I collect fans. I collect lamps. I've got, I mean, my life is just crazy. It doesn't just start at the cars, or end at the cars, I should say. I'm going to show you guys a couple cars that we have here in the shop, around the shop today. You don't need to lock that, Tom. You can keep it open. So this is the body shop. You can see inside here. There's my that's my 61 Volkswagen. That's a transport. I'm going to try and stay away from that noise that's out there. There's a, right there, you can see there's a 63 and a half. That's a 63 and a half, what is that, a Galaxy?
Yeah.
We got motorcycles up on the racks. I'm trying to see here. I've got my 36 that's out here too somewhere. Oh, here it is right here. My 36 right here.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And then on the other side of the shop, I have another area of the shop that we're working on other cars. I'll kind of wander out that way, try and stay away from this compressor that just kicked on out of the blue.
Timing's everything.
Yeah.
No, it's not a problem with us hearing you, so don't worry about it.
What's up on that rack that we just passed?
The rack itself, that's my 32. I'll show you guys that too. There's a 69 Porsche. In the background, there's a 58 that's in the background,
Chevy,
a 58 Bel Air that we're working on. I'm going to try and drive that car to Maine this year. That'll be a fun car. But here's the, this is the 32. Let's see if I can get in here and show you guys this. This is the 32. And I'm trying to see if I can read the board on it. That's the original build board.
Plymouth bumpers. I see it.
Yeah. And then it's original paint all the way through. Let me get over here. It's hard to get into this. It's up on a rack. We got to yank it off the rack today. But believe it or not, this car was called the Why Not.
Okay. It sounds reasonable.
Yeah. And it was a guy that owned a pizza company here, local, up by Chicago. And that was his daily driver. He drove that every day.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, and that's what they did back in the 50s. You know, you didn't have 6 different cars. You had one car. It's no different than if you were a motorcycle rider, you rode your bike.
Mm-hmm.
Now people didn't have the luxury of going, oh wow, I got hot rods. I got 6 or 7 of them I get to keep. I get to have them. And you know, today's a different world we live in.
You can check out his neon signs right there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there's more neon in here than I mean, it's just everywhere. It's everywhere in here. So I probably got maybe 200 neons total.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's always fun. It's
now,
always fun. That's what makes you get up in the morning.
Do you do sales out of that building, or is that just your base of operation?
I do sales out of here, but 99% of the people that I deal with they're either museums, they're restaurants, or they're dealers. Okay. I'm not a retail guy. I don't like dealing with the retail business. I tell people all the time, if they would like to stop by the shop and come in and take a look, if I'm here, the shop's open. If I'm not here, it's closed. So to catch me here, I'm home right now, but next week I'll be off on another trip. I've got to go to New York. I think I told you guys I got to go to New York, New Hampshire, Hershey, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, down to Atlanta, and then home. That's one trip for me.
Wow. All by truck.
Yeah, I've got a Ford F-450 with a 38-foot gooseneck trailer I haul with it.
Wow.
Yeah. And usually, but the funny thing is, I always tell people, if it leaves empty, it's definitely not going to come back empty.
So when you guys are seen driving those vans,
Yeah.
Are you actually in those vans, or do they ship them around and then you just kind of meet them flying
No,
in?
we're actually in the vans driving. We drive about an average of, in the vans, I think yearly, we're about roughly 38 to 40,000 miles a year in the van.
That's not really that bad considering what you're doing.
No, not really. I mean, it really not that bad. On top of what I do on that portion, 38 to 40,000, I do another 30,000 miles on top of that. So I'm probably on the road minimum of 75,000 miles.
Wow.
Yeah.
A year. Wow.
Well, that's how you're going to find the stuff. You guys
That's
know
right.
that.
That's
Well,
right.
finding it, you got to find it, you got to pick it up.
That's right. And you know what? I'm one of those guys that truly believe this. If you buy something from somebody, there's more stuff there. So you have to go pick it up. I want to know what else this guy's got. If he has that, he's got more stuff.
Okay, so if people are looking for about to go on a long road trip, what is Rob Wolfe's suggestions for making it a comfortable ride in your vehicle?
Comfortable ride in your vehicle. You got to have good music. You got to have a great podcast and good snacks. And you got to be on the 2 lanes. You can't be on the highways and enjoy a trip. You're never going to see what America's about if you don't get off the get on the 2-lane highways and get off I like to take the gravel roads.
Ah,
Where's your favorite place to pick?
Pennsylvania.
Really?
Yeah, there was so much industry in that Pennsylvania region. Anything up and down the East Coast, it's where America started. There's so many wild cars. I pulled a Wolverine out of a barn about 10 years ago, which most people don't even know what a Wolverine is. That's the stuff that makes me get up in the morning. The early brass era cars, the manufacturers that were out there on the East Coast in the early days.
so talk about it for people who don't know. What is a Wolverine?
That's a car. There was a car company, and they built a brass era type car. Very, very rare to find one, and very rare to find it in any condition. It's in a museum now on the East Coast. They drove it after I found it, and I couldn't even believe they got it running, to tell you the truth, because I didn't think the thing would ever run. The early car manufacturers in America, you tend to have to actually remake some of the parts because you're never going to find them. It's like Marmon, Stutz, even on Studebaker stuff's out there, but I like to find the early stuff. I'm looking for a brass era Cadillac. Anybody out there got one for sale? It's got to be original paint.
Oh, yeah, that makes it a little tough.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, it's like trying to find basic
teeth.
brake parts for a '69 Pontiac. You can't find them.
Exactly. Yeah.
Let me tell you about that. So yeah.
Here's the thing: I always love the challenge. So that challenge came to me about 3 years ago about this Cadillac, and I'm going to find one. I'll guarantee it. It might be 3 years from now, but I will find it. I guarantee it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah. Once we air this, everyone's going to know about it.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, word of mouth. Yeah. Word of mouth. That's how you find it. People start, like you were saying, people know you're out there looking. They hear you want something. They're going to say to a friend, hey, this guy's looking for something like this, who's going to say to a friend, who's going to say to a friend, and it's going to pass on down until someone's got one in the garage that, oh, yeah, Grandpa had one of these, I think, and they'll contact you.
Yeah. Well, that's, it's when my brother and I started picking, no different than when you guys were getting into cars, there was no such thing as a phone. You didn't have a phone.
No.
You didn't have the ability to look up Google to find out a price. You didn't have any of that stuff. No. So when you talk about networking and making a word of mouth, it's no different than what you guys have done with cars over the years. You did it at shows. You networked, you went to the shows. And I tell people all the time, you want to learn the business, you want to get out there, you got to go to the shows. You got to network with people. They'll teach you what's going on, and they'll help you find the stuff you're looking for. So that's why I continue to this day. I will always go to the shows. Hershey, Pennsylvania, Pate's my big one. I go to Iola every year. I do the 32 Roadster show in California. I get to some smaller flea markets and stuff. Those are the people that are out there. I call them the fingers. Those are the fingers that are actually you just got to work them all and keep in contact with them.
Do the picks you make change based on who your co-pilot is? Like if you're working with Jersey John or you're working with Danielle or something along those lines?
Yeah, I say they do. I mean, it tends, tends to happen differently, and every day a pick is, the biggest thing is for us as we don't get to know what these picks are prior to us getting there. I
Oh,
mean, everybody thinks that we do, but we don't. The people that the producers know what's going on. It's got to be, my brother's been very adamant about that, and I think that one of the reasons that it's lasted as long as it has on television is because it truly is reality television. you know when we get to these places, we haven't seen anything there. We don't know what's behind the curtain. We don't know what's behind the door. We don't know. So when we get there, we're just as surprised as everybody else, and it makes us want to wonder what's in the box on the bottom, what's in the back room, what's in the garage, what's in the basement.
We had talked a little bit earlier about your family and the fact that you could be doing this for a long time. I remember talking to Richard Carpenter of the musical group, and he had talked about how he's got all these cool cars, but none of his kids are really into cars. What about any of your kids? Is there any of your kids that could someday be a successor to you?
I think that my oldest, my daughter, she's 19. I think that she's going to end up doing some stuff with it. She's starting to listen to oldies music more often. I've got a son that actually is really good, and he's into a lot of this stuff. I think it's bred into them. I think that, parents I think it was bred into me from my grandfather, and my mom, wanting to treasure and hopefully save stuff. And some teachers in high school, we had I went to high school. We had shop teachers.
yeah.
I actually loved my shop teacher would bring hot rods in. Today kids don't have that anymore.
No.
They get to use the welding. They'll go to the wood classes, but they don't get to do what we did as kids. So I think that, I think I'll have some kids that'll eventually take over and want to do the same thing that I'm doing. And I hope for it, because it's been a good life, and it's got a long run ahead of it.
Now, what made you get involved with your brother in the show?
Well, I mean, I was always involved with the show in the back sense, meaning I was always doing stuff. Whether it not been on the camera, I was doing the stuff on the back side of it. So I was always involved and have always been. So when Frank basically ended up leaving the show, they had to actually fill that spot. Well, I'd already been into that spot. I'd already been filled in there. So
Right.
It was kind of just a natural fit. Bringing Jersey John onto it is just another natural fit. I mean, Jersey's a guy that my brother and I have been picking with for 25 plus years. So he's a character in every sense of the word. And, you talk about does it change picks? Jersey's one of those guys that grew up around furniture. So he knows every piece of furniture
Okay.
there is under the sun. And he can restore anything when it comes from antique motorcycles to furniture to clocks to radios. He's done all that. He's that kind of guy.
So speaking of some of the people you work with, Danielle, is she back for next year?
She is. She's 100% back. We just finished. We filmed some down here at my shop with her about 3 weeks ago, and I was filming with her out in LeClaire not too long ago.
Mm-hmm. All right.
So all the main characters are still there.
All right. You've told us your specialty is pretty much transportation.
Yeah.
What are the specialty? And Mike seems to be, he loves motorcycles
He's into motorcycles and bicycles.
and bicycles.
Yeah.
What's Danielle's specialty, or is something that she gravitates to?
God, I want to say that she's definitely into the early vintage clothing, and she's into anything that goes back into the burlesque days, basically all the way back into the Western days. She's an historian when it comes to that stuff. I think those are her two specialties. And really, being Danielle, you have to have a specialty for everything, because you have to understand the people that she's talking to. She has to understand those pieces that they're describing to her. They might send her photos. She has to understand that stuff. So
Right.
she's actually, gotten a big education in the last 15 years on this stuff.
There's a classic episode of your guys' show where you and Danielle went on a pick, and it had something to do with some stripper or something like that. And
It was a burlesque lady, and she was world famous, and that was in Kansas City. Yeah, and yeah, I know they got those. I don't even know what those dang feathers are called, but they're boulets or something. I think they're called.
You became an expert in boulets. There you
Yeah,
go.
yeah. I became an expert in, and honestly, the big thing for me for that episode was it opened my eyes to an area that I'd never learned about before. So, I tell people every day, I was the worst student that could ever been. My brother would be like, "Hey, I graduated last in my class out of 400 students." That was my brother and I. We hated school, but when it came to history, we loved it. And I tell people every day, you can hate school as much as you want, but you got to learn something new every day. Every single day you learn something new of your life. So you never really leave school. The longevity, I think, of the show is, how do I want to say it? It's in the viewer's hands, I guess. The longevity of the show. A lot of people look at Antique Roadshow, which has been on the air for 18 years,
Ooh.
and they look at that and go, "God, that's the most boringest show ever." I look at it as it's the most historical show ever put out, and it teaches you something every day. And I think that's what people like to. I'll watch that thing at midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm just intrigued because I want to learn what they're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, they're experts or something to listen to when they look at something and they know the history, they know what it is.
Yeah.
That's the part that fascinates me. And you guys do a lot of that too. Mike on the motorcycles, you on the transportation items. I love listening to what you guys have to say because, yeah, I may have been exposed to that, but never paid attention to it. And you go into detail.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's one thing I love about the show is that it's a teaching tool, that it teaches people. And I hear that from kids that come in here. They'll come in my shop. We do, I'll let history teachers bring their kids down here, take photos of things in the shop, and then have them write up reports about what they saw. So it's a teaching tool. Everything we do, I think, is a teaching tool. And I think us as the elders of this, we have to basically be able to teach these kids how to save history and how to move it on. I always say move the needle forward. It's not about destroying it. It's about saving it and making sure that the next generation, my great grandson is going to be able to enjoy the same things that we have.
Thanks for joining us on this one. I appreciate it, Rob. This has been a lot of fun.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate you guys. You guys have a great day.
When you're out in California, please look me up.
I will. Thank you so much.
We'll get together. Randy, that's another story.
And do you ever get up by Seattle?
Just up there.
Oh, were you? Randy. Missed you by that much.
I know. We were. The problem is every time we get into an area, it's like we're so busy we never have the time to do what we need to do. That's one of the things that's created me being on the road more. Mm-hmm. So I have some stuff that's actually in Seattle I need to get picked up, and it's about timing when I'm going to get out there.
Absolutely. Well, let me know. It'd be fun. Good to see you. So, yeah. All right. Thanks for joining us again, everybody. Looking forward to you guys hitting the road again and doing more episodes. And that's, of course, Rob Wolfe. That's Hot Rod Bob. I'm Randy Cardoon. Thanks for joining us for another Talking About Cars with Randy Cardoon.